Okay. Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? I am back. It may have been a lightning strike. I don't know. We're expecting some bad weather in the next 24 hours. I'm not questioning why my life hiccuped, but I am back and I am up and running. And I will just mark this as part two, right? And then that way we will keep whatever the lesson was that I had just spewed. And I will go back in and listen myself because I have no idea what I just spewed. I was talking about my amazing day off today and how me and my sister spent the day together with my nephew and how we went thrifting and how we just had the most amazing day. And coming home and unwinding and looking at my house and looking at all the things that I need to get done, I'm thinking, you know what, Cindy? You've done enough, right? Today is good. Go in, do your live, call it a night, right? And in the morning, get up and create the most magnificent day for yourself like you did today. It's going to look totally different than yesterday, but right? It's still going to be magnificent. Okay, before I lose this video, you guys, let's just get right into picking our powerful word. We'll go off for a few minutes or however long it takes, and the first perspective that comes to my mind as we get into the word. For those of you who have never come into these lives before, each week we pick a powerful word on Monday and we chew on it, in different stories. Sometimes it's an experience I had, maybe it's an experience from my dynamic family. Maybe it is an adventure I've been on, or maybe it's somebody else's experience, or somebody else who has inspired me in an action that they've done that might be pertinent in the conversation, right? You never know. But we chew on that word all week, and I've gotten a lot out of it. We're on word number 45 now. We're pulling 54 cards. So we have been at this, right, for almost a year. 9 more weeks, people. 9 more weeks. It is a countdown. Nine more powerful words going to be added to this deck of cards. But also in that, right, that means 10 weeks from now, we will be on our big trip for this year. So, how exciting is that? I'm going to work my chores tomorrow in getting ready for the next work week. I'm going to fill my day in with conversations and documentaries. I'm going to work on the trip, get ready, make sure everything is down packed, right? And we are off and running. And I'm going to keep myself in that high in the process. Like today, every time I go to the store for anything, I have to get something for my trip, right? In that preparation. So, things that will cost money because, right, we'll be using my last couple of checks for my vacation. It'd be nice not to say, well, I need the cat litter and I need the cat food for my sister, which I've already got, right? I buy it ahead of the time. These are big purchases. There's $50 taken care of right there on that trip that I won't have to cough up later. Today I picked up the Fat Boys, which are the little propane tanks for my Coleman stove. So I've got 3 of those now. And so between now and when I leave for the trip, I'm going to need another 2 or 3 of those to last the trip. But because they are pricey, you get them now. So again, at the end, right? You're not dishing out all this money even before you get off on the road, right? That's the preparation, right? And I understand that the more money and the more things that I can get down packed now and put off to the side and out of that worry, the better the vacation is going to be, right? So that's the plan. We're working towards that. I think we have the car taken care of now for 2 weeks. We have the gas almost taken care of now. So that's pretty exciting. And in another 2 weeks, we're going to have the campsites taken care of. And then it's just a matter of that spending money and hopefully just the groceries if I can get ahead of some of these things that will help to make the trip so much more wonderful, but because they're a little pricey, right? I don't want to go cheapo. It's something I don't do. When it comes to this trip, I could have done anything this year. I mean, I could have gone to another country, right? There are lots of amazing places in this world I would have liked to have seen. And this trip is not a cheap trip. This trip is going to cost me a little bit, right? But it's the trip that I want. It's the trip that's going to make me happy. It's the trip that's going to make those other parts of me happy too, because it's something that Cindy and those other parts of her have in common. It's something that, right, we all enjoy as part of that majority of me. And so this vacation was specifically created around the things that I love to do, and that connection to Mother Nature, that rummaging around in the dirt, in the mud, in those beautiful landscapes. It's going to be absolutely amazing. Okay, you guys, let's get into it now. Our word, first perspective that comes to my mind, and we're going to work on it all week. It's our 45th word. Our word this week is, we have to move up because we've got that word already. So the next, wow, it's a great word. We are talking about inspiration this week. Wow, the first perspective, inspiration. Okay. You know, when I was growing up, I come from a very dynamic family. We all had roles in that family. We all had talents. We all had weaknesses. And we were not treated equally, but we were all groomed in those spots that we held within the family. We'll just put it that way. There was inspiration, right, on both sides. And when we talk about inspiration, the first thing in my perspective is that influence. And I know we recently had this word, influence, but that inspiration and that influence that I take for myself, I have to be inspired by that, right? My eyes have to be popping out of my head. I have to be, I have to be, I have to be touched by it. I want to be not necessarily to be the same, to copy anybody, but sometimes when you see the evidence that something can be done, that it's possible, right? That there's a different choice. There's a different choice, and that we can choose for ourselves that influence, that good influence, that bad influence, and right? But it's to each one of us to decide what is good or bad influence. It's all dependent in the values that we have. As a child, I right? My mother was very alpha. My mother ruled the household. My mother, you did not argue with her. And again, each one of us had it. I had three sisters, so there were four of us girls. Each one of us were groomed, were brought up a little bit differently, depending on right my parents' needs, my parents' understandings, those roles that we projected out. And so when we projected that out in that comfortableness, that was important in the movement of my parents' lives because they were creating the best possible lives for themselves as they possibly could, but they were just as challenged as anybody else, right? And I don't know how they got this idea of archetypes because right it was something that was very strongly in place in my family, and I had that role, and I take responsibility because I invited that role into my life. That role would not have been a part of my life unless I had accepted it as a part of me. And that's truth. And that's the influence. That's that's the things that we pick up along the way. But also remember what I said when we grabbed the word. It's also in our choices. And because I had two parents, and both of those parents were opposite of each other. My father was a very highly sensitive and empathic person himself. I am my father's daughter. My mother was a little bit opposite, and like I said, she ruled the nest and she ruled the family and she ruled me. And right, honor thy mother, thy father, thy guilt and shame, and those lessons that bind us into behaviors that possibly, right, we're not deserving, right, in the giving of it. But because I felt I didn't have a choice, the only choice I thought I had was to for myself, for the inside. I would follow suit with whatever was expected of me. I would accept and follow suit whatever was said to me or projected onto me. That person that's not causing waves, that person who's going to honor thy mother and the father, that person who is going to turn the other cheek, that person who's not going to say anything if they don't have something nice to say. These are lessons that I grew up with. It was a toughie, right? But I chose that because I wanted to be safe. I chose that because I thought that was my best out. But inside inside my mind, in my understandings, and in my choices, right? I am my father's daughter. So I rejected. There was a lot, right? I rejected. So I get it. And I take responsibility for my part in that damaged relationship that didn't need to happen, but because we all have our own experiences and because empathy is born of trauma, I can't help the person that I was, right? I am doing my very best in that adapt and conquer, in that movement forward, in better understanding what happened and how I could better move forward without holding that, right? That's the untangling of the wires that do that for me. And it's not painful. It's my mother cannot hurt me in this moment, my mother has been passed for a long time. But at the same time, my father has been passed for a long time. And because of those lessons that I chose, because of that influence that I chose, because somebody was the evidence for me. My father was that example for me. And so I chose to, right, be my father's daughter, to move by those values, but at the same time, failing myself for the lack of not wanting the pain because it was safer for me. It was less of a headache because there was a lot of yelling and stuff in that household, and being highly sensitive and being empathic, that rattles you, right? That yelling and that incoherence of that anger, right? And I come from very much narcissistic tendencies in a lot of members of my family. We're not just talking my mother, right? I didn't know. I woke up to these ideas very late. And, you know, I love my sisters. I love each and every one of them, right? My empathic sisters, my yogic sister, and because she just sits at her table and she just stares off into space. She's so there already. You ask her a question, she's got the answer just like that. But you ask her a second time, can you repeat that? She'll just go blank and look at you all confused because she won't even remember what she was talking about, right? But I have narcissistic sisters too, very controlling sisters that are also on that line that they could swing either way, where they could be. And they are. They're so sweet. All of them, every single one of them. But they do have that bite. They do have that alpha. They do have that narcissistic, controlling. And me too, I have those very controlling aspects of myself. And that was the butting head because, right, I had made my decision where my influence was coming from when I was growing up. And so I rejected my mother very, very early, very young. I didn't have a choice. If that relationship was different, right? If we moved together with a little bit better understanding for each other, right? It could have been a different story. But like I said, I didn't wake up to any of these ideas until well into my 50s. And by then, it was too late. My mother had just passed, and that gift of me was passed down to my sister, right? And my sister's tendencies were again, right? She got to choose her own influences, and I'm grateful of those kind tendencies that she had. But she was equally, right? She'd take your head off and, right, shove your knackers in your mouth and tear out your tongue and shove that tongue somewhere else if you crossed her in any way, right? She would go for the jugular. So again, in my hypervigilance, and I didn't understand it because she was my savior and she took care of every problem I ever had. But that was, right? She was a leader, and that's what she did, and that's where she thrived, and I was happy, right? Being the highly sensitive, just to pass that to her, right? Because she was happy in the playing of that role. And even though I was the oldest daughter, I should have picked up those reins. But that wasn't my thing. I was out exploring. I was an urban explorer. I was out on the back roads. I was out living my life. I was free, right? And because I wasn't that ambitious person that she was, it just seemed to make better sense of that. But right? New understandings, new time that I'm living in, right? A little bit of different movement for me that has brought about different ideas, right? Different way of thinking. It has allowed me to build up values and boundaries and offered up, the opportunity to set goals and move towards my desires and have the confidence that I can create whatever I want to create. And then at the same time, be able to help others in their own untangling of those wires of, right, whoever you might be, and those other parts of you that are coming along for the ride. And in better understanding that, well, this partnership that I've always had, right? Not like I have now, but that partnership that I have with myself now is very self-protecting, and I was always very self-protective, but I didn't understand what was the comfort in that protection and what was the discomfort. And that's the untangling of the wires. And as we untangle the wires, we get to know each other, we get to know ourselves a little bit better. And once that happens, right, we can move a little bit better. And once we can move a little bit better, right, we can relax and we can listen and pay attention and view the beautiful landscapes and take in the lessons without being, what did my sister call it? Squirreled. Right? That's the ADHD in me, right? And that is true. I can be distracted by the sparklies and the things that step across my path, and I can lose track of the moment, right? Just like I did there in the little laugh, because I would just, right? She made me laugh. She made me laugh today when she told me what she was laughing about me with, because it was so true and she hit the mark, right? But those are traits of me. Those are my badges of honor. I've earned those. And, that is part of the evidence and it's part of the example of where we get it right and where we get it wrong, right? I'm bumbling along just like everybody else, right? We all have handicaps, we all have talents and gifts, right? But you just have to be brave enough just to show up anyway, right? In that adapt and conquer, in making choices. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be a good choice, just any old choice, because all paths lead to, right? And that is 100% the truth. It's why I'm able just to show up every single day. It's why I'm able to get up over the little hiccups like my live show cutting out on me and I had to start it up again, right? Part one and part two. We'll just leave it at that. We got this word influence, but it seems to me that we had this word influence. I really hope that we haven't had this word. I talk about influence all the time. Oh, we did. It wasn't influence that we had, it was inspiration, right? That inspiration. Oh my goodness, that inspiration was my father. That inspiration was the example that I recognize that woke me up. The first lesson to wake me up as to, right, who I truly was meant to be. Not so much what I was in the moment, I was far from it, but I'm getting closer and closer every day. And I suspect it will never end, right? I'll always be a student. 100%. I will always be a student. I will never stop learning. It's important for me. It's important even more for those other parts of me, right? And I suspect those parts of me that are out there, meaning those people who come in and hang out with me and keep me company when I have these conversations, right? They're not always comfortable conversations, but I think they're very important conversations because I can see what choices are doing for us and doing to us, right? So sometimes that that word that we got, inspiration, right? That's your influence. That's what's going to help you move forward. So when you look at movement, when you look at goals, right? When you look at those people that you would like to maybe not be exactly like, but would like to follow in their footsteps, what they're doing looks like fun. It looks like something you would be very good at. It looks like something that you could do for a long time and stay with it because, right? That you think possibly it might be something that could be everlasting, right? Who inspires you? What inspires you? What would make it so that you could just keep going in that? Where you can start just adapting and conquering and understanding you're never going to give up. You're just always going to keep going. You're always going to keep moving, right? That is inspiration. Inspiration, right? Right? In conquering the storm. Hello, Nancy. Hello, Nancy. We got the word inspiration this week. The things that inspire you. Oh my goodness, look at all those. Look at all those hearts. Look at all. Let me have a sip of my coffee because Nancy has just made me squirrel. Kind of got what my sister was saying yesterday after she explained it to me, but I got it only because, right? I recognize the ADHD. I recognize the memory loss when I come in live and I have those conversations and I stop mid sentence and I right away because I this is a podcast. People are here listening. You don't want 5 minutes of blank. So quite often what I will do is I will just move into something else and just let that flow take me somewhere else. And if it was meant to come back, if it was meant to be said, if it was meant to be brought to the table, it will come across my path again, or it'll come across my mind again. So when my sister, right, screamed out squirrel in my live last night on Chatter's Live, right? And I said, right, squirrel, what's that all about? I had no idea. And then she explained it to me, and I went, oh, darn, that ADHD, right? And that comes from childhood trauma. That comes from the hypervigilance, right? That means we probably didn't do very well in school because we couldn't concentrate on the chalkboard. We couldn't concentrate on what the teacher was saying because we were paying attention to the spitballs and the nasty things people were doing and the trip ups and the cutting of the hair or the bubble gum in the whatever it was, right? That was influence. But that was influence not born of inspiration, right? That was influence born of probably desperation, right? Somebody is not getting enough attention, somebody who wants to bring somebody down low in their emotions because they themselves are feeling that way, right? We each get to choose what inspires us, right? So think about that when we talk about inspiration this week. Take a look at some of those people that truly inspire you, that make it so it's possible that you can just keep going, right? Right? What inspires you, Nancy? Who inspired you? I would be curious for that. I know a lot of Nancy's stories, so I'm thinking in my own mind as I ask her that question where her inspiration would have come from. And I think that inspiration would have to say, oh, no problem. No problem, Nancy, at all. I would have to say her inspiration comes from her passions, right? She has lots of passion. She is a Heinz 57s in the things that she loves. She loves her broken city. She loves her reborns, right? She loves her trains. She loves getting under the skin of people who get under her skin. She's very diverse and she's very interesting, but that's the thing, right? Because you have these different interests, you get that opportunity to be able to get into a conversation, maybe not as an expert, but you know a little bit something, you know a little something that can at least get you in that conversation 100%. So this week we got inspiration. I guess I'll have to talk about some of the characters that inspired me in the beginnings of my movement. We talked, right? My father was my inspiration. My father was my savior. My father was my safe place. He was my go-to. He was who I was codependent on, right? And in the lessons in the past half a dozen years, right? I've had to pull myself, right? Almost in that denying of my mother, in that rejection of my mother, in choosing what inspires me, what I'm going to allow to influence me, right? I took on a lot of my father's traits because he didn't talk about, right? We didn't talk about these things. He didn't see my potential. So I did not partake in these kind of conversations with my father. I couldn't even imagine where we would go if I was able to sit down and have a conversation with him now, what I knowing what I know now, right? But I know my father would have stumbled over himself in the course correction if he had known, if he had seen my potential. So I can't judge when I've been wearing blinders as to what I get to see, what I get to experience. I have to take note that my father was also wearing blinders, right? There was lots that wasn't shown to him, lots of things he didn't get, right? And possibly, maybe there were some things that he did get, right? I don't think I ever inspired my father for anything in all honesty. I say that with smiles, right? Only because it would have been amazing, right? To be able to be beautiful, successful, right? To be able to alleviate that discomfort in my father's living condition in his final years. And that possibility was there, and yet it wasn't. And sometimes we beat ourselves up that we didn't see it, or we didn't deserve it, or we did something wrong to make it take so long. And we don't think that there might have been a reason why we would have been blank to some things, right? And inspired by others. And that's a truth. There are lots of people out there that I should have been inspired by, but it was within my own family that I had my most experience. And because, my sisters were my best friends for decades, right? That was that was my influence. But was that my inspiration? I would have to say yes, right? My sisters were very inspiring when it came to my movement forward, and it was probably why, or one of the reasons why, I was invited to this party, because I had that capability and understanding to recognize recognize that, and possibly, right, maybe I was meant to support them, but sometimes in that turnaround, sometimes in that um, projection, sometimes in the eyes opening up to different ideas and different understandings, that we have to make different choices, right? That's something that's always been around us, always something that we have appreciated, something we've always depended on us, could have been what was truly holding us back. But that's a conversation for another day. I had a great day today. Every last drop. I like the ever last drop. I come home totally bagged, have an amazing sleep, totally re energized the next morning, and we go at it again. I'm on like day number 4 at this pace, and it feels pretty good. But let's see what we can get accomplished. We did pretty good today. Let's see what Cindy can do for tomorrow. Okay, you guys. Nancy says, I'm inspired by nature and compassion. I see small children battling things like cancer, and they teach me a lot about keeping fighting. Oh, you know what? That's absolutely just spectacular. I love that, Nancy. I am also inspired by Mother Nature, but I'm inspired when people who are sad, or people who are struggling in their lives, when they're showing up, when they're stepping up to the plate, when they're being responsible, and they're being the example for others. That's what inspires me. That's what makes me want to follow, right? We all want to follow what inspires us, but we can be inspired by so many different things, right? I am inspired by great thought leadership. I do. I'm inspired by medical technology. I am inspired by the digital age that has offered up an opportunity for me to go deep. And I'm taking full advantage of that, and I'm not stopping anytime soon. I'm inspired by beautiful art. I'm inspired by beautiful art. And I'm inspired by myself, you guys. I have to give myself credit there. I inspire myself. And Nancy, I would have to say you should say the same thing, right? That you inspire yourself. Because I know if I was in your shoes, and right, as much as I love you, Nancy, I don't want to be in your shoes, right? I do inspire myself by reflecting on you showing up on the plate in your own struggles, right? Get it. You get it. That's pretty awesome. But yeah, I have to say I inspire my I inspire myself just in that never giving up, like Nancy says, right? In that never giving up, I inspire myself, right? In that adapt and conquer, in picking myself up and dusting off my knees and just carrying on, into delving into the whys of things, right? That I could do that, right? Not everybody can, not everybody wants to, because it's not always fun. Because lots of times, right, when we're looking at the culprit, who are we looking at, right? And that's got to be a truth too, 100%. Okay, you guys, that's got to be it for tonight. I'll be back tomorrow. I didn't give my live a lot of thought today, only because I stuffed it full of my family and and in a little bit of that entrepreneurship that I keep talking about, right? We were talking about it today that right, we're not too far away from being able to put a roof over our heads, right? But at the same time, right, it only takes a week of no sales and then you can put yourself in the rut so that you don't jump off, right? That job that's putting the roof over your head until you're able to settle in and recognize that you can put a roof over your head in another way without that hiccup, without that, right? The bridge falling beneath your feet as you're trying to make that kind of movement, right? We're not looking to trash our lives. We're not looking to self sabotage. We're looking to make some change and some choices in our life, and we understand the choices and the change are going to be difficult and sometimes not fun, but it's most definitely necessary. And so when we talk about inspiration and using ourselves as that motivator in that inspiration, right? I showed up today. I was bagged. I could have gone to bed an hour ago and been fast asleep in that time. But I hold myself accountable because I've been given many gifts this week, and that's the truth. And those gifts, even in today, were absolutely killer. I found an ornament that was worth a lot of money today, and that's a really cool feeling. And that's what we got to feed off of when we're making difficult movement, when we're right, we're not quite comfortable with what we're doing, but we know we got to get it done, right? We got to be our own inspiration. Okay, you guys, it's time for something cold to drink. And then I'm going to get my pajamas and crawl into bed, and we're just going to call it an end of day number one, and then a set of days off that puts the roof over my head. Everybody, have a great night. Thank you, Nancy, for popping in. Have a great night.